Hello and welcome. Every now and then, something happens in the financial world that really makes you stop and scratch your head. Well, something like that just happened. It involves two resources we all know very well, silver and oil. But right now, they're telling a story that has even the experts a little baffled. So let's break it down. So let me ask you this. What if I told you that an ounce of silver, the stuff in your old coins or maybe a piece of jewelry, is now worth more than a whole barrel of the oil that fuels our world? It sounds, well, it sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? But it's exactly what's happening right now, and it's a signal we haven't seen in most of our lifetimes. And there it is, plain as day. For the first time in a very, very long time, a single ounce of silver is more expensive than a full barrel of crude oil. I mean, just think about that. The metal we think of as decorative is valued higher than the black gold that literally runs our entire global economy. It's a flip that almost nobody saw coming. Now, let's be clear, this is not normal, not by a long shot. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into why this is happening, what's going on behind the scenes, and maybe more importantly, what could this surprising shift mean for us, for our savings, and for the future? This quote from a top strategist, Philip Strebel, just hits the nail on the head. He said you couldn't have two different products going in complete polar opposites, and that's exactly what we have here. So let's unpack these two completely different stories. Okay, so how on earth can two of the world's most important commodities be heading in completely opposite directions? It all boils down to that classic rule of supply and demand. But trust me, the story here is anything but ordinary. On the one hand, you've got silver. Its demand is absolutely surging thanks to green energy like solar panels and all the new AI technology. In fact, for 5 years in a row, we've been using more silver than we've been able to mine. The cupboards are getting a little bare. Then you look at oil. It's the exact opposite story. There's a flood of it on the market, more than we need. And with the steady rise of electric vehicles, the long-term picture for oil demand is starting to look, well, a little less certain. So, you're probably wondering, has this ever happened before? Well, to really get what's happening today, we have to dust off the history books. And the answer is pretty surprising. There's this little trick our minds play on us called recency bias. It just means we tend to think that whatever's been happening lately is how things have always been and how they'll always be. We just don't look back far enough. And that can really get in the way of seeing the bigger picture. But when you do look back, wow, get this. Back in 1893, one single ounce of silver could buy 4.5 barrels of oil. 4.5. All of a sudden, today's 1-to-1 ratio doesn't seem quite so wild, does it? It just shows that this has happened before. It's just been a very, very long time since we've seen it. And this timeline really puts it all into perspective. You see, after Rockefeller made oil king in the late 1800s, it dominated for more than a century. But look at that peak for silver way back in 1893. It happened during a financial crisis and when there was too much oil on the market. Sound a little familiar? It seems like history might not repeat, but it sure does rhyme. By the way, if you're finding this interesting and helpful, please take a quick second to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us continue to bring you these explainers, and that way you won't miss any of our future updates. But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about silver versus oil. It's actually a clue. It's pointing to a much larger shift happening in our economy, one that really affects the value of the very money in our pockets. The big idea here has a fancy name, currency debasement. But don't let the term fool you. It's something we all feel every day. It simply means that your money buys less today than it did yesterday. Just think about what a gallon of milk or gas cost 20 years ago compared to now. That's currency debasement right there. I love how Jeff Curry, the former big boss of commodities at Goldman Sachs, put it. He said the problem is we have too many dollars chasing too few atoms in the world. And when you have too much paper money floating around, people naturally start looking for the atoms, the real physical things to protect their wealth. And this is leading to two huge trends happening at the same time. First, you have the debasement trade. That's folks like you and me buying physical assets like gold and silver to keep our savings from losing their buying power. But then there's the de-dollarization trade. That's entire countries, big ones, stockpiling gold to become less dependent on the U.S. dollar. It's happening on both a personal and a global scale. And it isn't just about silver. This whole trend of looking for safety in real, tangible things, what we call hard assets, is lifting the whole family of precious metals. And each one has its own unique, compelling story right now. So let's take a quick look.
Silver, as we've seen, is getting a huge double boost from its use in industry and as an investment. Gold is doing what it's always done, acting as a safe haven backed by 3,000 years of history and massive buying from central banks around the world. And even platinum is having a moment, partly thanks to a surprising policy change over in Europe.
But at the end of the day, when people look for the ultimate safe haven, they still look to gold. I mean, it's a $30 trillion market. It has survived for 3,000 years. It's outlasted every empire, every paper currency, every financial crisis. That kind of track record provides a sense of security that's pretty hard to find anywhere else. So that really leaves us with a final big question to think about. As our world gets more and more digital and our money becomes just numbers on a screen, what's the real value of holding something you can actually touch, something tangible? It's a question that this strange historic flip between silver and oil is forcing all of us to think about.